Sarah Johnson took a deep breath as she put the finishing touches on her makeup in front of the mirror. "Amy, are you ready?" she called out, and her 8-year-old daughter came bounding into the room. "Mom, this dress is just lovely." Amy twirled around, showing off her purple dress. Sarah smiled as she tidied her daughter's hair, saying, "You're the prettiest of all." Sarah had been raising Amy on her own, working as a freelance graphic designer while her husband Mike was away on an overseas assignment. Today was her brother Tom's wedding. With this big family event after so long, Sarah's heart was a mix of excitement and anxiety. "Hey Mom, can't Dad come today either?" Sarah smiled a bit sadly at Amy's question. "I'm sorry, honey. Dad can't make it this time because of work. But we'll take lots of pictures to send him, okay?" As they got into the car, Sarah remembered what her brother had told her about the bride, Jessica. Apparently, she's from a wealthy family. She seems like a nice person, but a bit of worry crossed her mind. After a 30-minute drive, Sarah and Amy arrived at the luxurious hotel. A sign at the entrance read, "Tom and Jessica Wedding." "Wow, it's like a castle." Amy's eyes sparkled as she looked around. Sarah too was overwhelmed by the grandeur. When they gave their names at the reception, the staff member looked a bit confused. "It seems your names aren't on the list." Sarah frowned. "That's odd. It's my brother's wedding." Just then, a woman in an elegant dress approached. "Oh, Sarah. Welcome." Sarah smiled and replied, "Thank you. You must be Jessica. It's nice to meet you." Jessica looked Sarah and Amy up and down, wrinkling her nose slightly. "Yes, Tom's sister." "Well, do come in." Feeling a bit uneasy, Sarah took Amy's hand and headed into the venue. The lavish decorations, sophisticated music, and glamorous guests made Sarah feel out of place. Amy whispered, "Mom, something feels weird." Sarah gently stroked her daughter's head and replied, "It'll be all right. I'm sure it'll be a wonderful wedding." However, in Sarah's heart, anxiety about what was to come was gradually growing. Sarah and Amy made their way through the glamorous wedding venue. Under the sparkling chandeliers, elegantly dressed guests were chatting. Sarah, feeling a bit nervous, was looking for her brother Tom. "Mom, where are our seats?" Amy asked, tilting her head. Sarah looked around the venue, starting to search for nameplates. But no matter where she looked, their names were nowhere to be found. "That's strange," Sarah muttered. "I'll go check." "Amy, wait here." Just as Sarah was about to ask a staff member, Jessica approached in her glamorous wedding dress. "Is something wrong, Sarah?" Jessica's voice seemed to have a hint of sarcasm. Sarah replied calmly, "Yes, we can't find our seats." "Could you tell us where they are?" Jessica laughed gracefully and said, "Oh my, didn't I tell you? Actually, we haven't prepared seats for you." Sarah's eyes widened in surprise. "What? What do you mean?" Jessica looked around and then lowered her voice, saying, let me be clear. There's no need for seats for a poor divorced single mother, is there? Why don't you go home and earn some money?" Sarah was at a loss for words. She felt her heart racing and her cheeks burning. "Wait, Jessica. There seems to be some misunderstanding." Misunderstanding?" Jessica laughed coldly. "I understand your situation perfectly. You were only invited out of Tom's pity. But there's no need to prepare seats for someone like you, right?" Sarah felt deeply hurt. She felt a mix of frustration at being misunderstood and sadness at being rejected at her brother's wedding. But she couldn't show that in front of her daughter. "Jessica, you don't know anything about me," Sarah said quietly but firmly. At that moment, Amy rushed to her mother's side. "Mom, what's wrong? Did you find our seats?" Sarah smiled gently at her daughter. "There seems to be a problem, Amy." Jessica looked down at Amy with a contemptuous smile. "Poor thing, you were so happy thinking you could come to a wedding like this. But this isn't the place for you." Sarah hugged Amy, suppressing her anger. "It's okay, Amy. Mom will take care of this." However, Sarah's heart was in turmoil. Did her brother Tom know about this? Why was Jessica so cold? And what should they do now? Sarah felt a deep loneliness in the gap between the glamour of the venue and the alienation they were feeling. However, Amy's presence beside her gave her strength. "What are you going to do, Sarah?" Jessica asked provocatively. "Are you leaving? Or will you watch the ceremony standing?" Sarah took a deep breath and slowly turned to face Jessica. There was a light of determination in her eyes. The moment Sarah turned to face Jessica, Amy squeezed her mother's hand tightly. Sarah noticed the change in her daughter's expression. Amy's eyes had a different light than usual. Amy had always had a mysterious ability to see through people's true nature since she was young. It was a secret known only to Sarah. Now, it seemed that power had appeared again. "Mom," Amy slowly opened her mouth. "That lady is lying." Jessica frowned in surprise. "What did you say?" Sarah placed her hand on her daughter's shoulder and quietly asked, "Amy, what do you mean?" Amy stared at Jessica and said in a clear voice, "Why aren't you telling the truth? You have a secret, don't you?" The atmosphere in the venue seemed to freeze for a moment. The color drained from Jessica's face. What are you talking about?" Jessica's voice trembled. Amy continued, "You said Mom was poor, but that's not true, is it? You're the one who's having money troubles, aren't you?" Jessica shook her head violently. "Nonsense." And Amy interrupted, "You're hiding someone. Someone who's here at this wedding today." Sarah gasped. The guests around them started to listen to Amy's words. Jessica's face turned pale blue. Stop. What are you?" At that moment, a man hurriedly approached from the corner of the venue. "Jessica, what's going on?" Amy pointed at the man. "That's him, Mom. The lady's real." "Be quiet." Jessica shouted. But it was too late. The venue suddenly became chaotic. Murmurs spread among the guests, with voices of surprise and question flying about. Tom rushed over. What on earth is happening? Sarah, Amy, why are you? Jessica, explain this. Jessica, on the verge of tears, said in a trembling voice, It's a misunderstanding, Tom. However, Amy's words had echoed throughout the venue. Jessica's secrets, her financial problems, and the presence of her lover invited to the wedding. Everything had been revealed. Sarah stood quietly amidst the chaos. In her heart, anger and sympathy were mixed. She had complex feelings about Amy's special power appearing again, and the commotion it had caused. Sarah, Tom turned to his sister. Tell me the truth. Is it true that there are no seats for you? Sarah nodded slowly. Yes, that's right. But, Tom. A look of anger appeared on Tom's face. He turned to Jessica and said in a harsh tone, What's the meaning of this, Jessica? Explain yourself. The venue was now in complete chaos. The guests wore expressions of surprise and confusion, and whispers swirled around. Sarah, hugging Amy, couldn't hide her confusion at this unexpected turn of events. She had wished for her brother's happiness, but to think the wedding would be ruined like this. However, now that the truth had been revealed, Sarah had another mission. To calm this chaos, and to protect the family bond. She took a deep breath and began to think about her next move. In the midst of the chaotic atmosphere in the venue, Sarah quietly stepped forward. There was a light of determination in her eyes. Everyone, please be quiet. Sarah's voice was surprisingly calm. I'll tell you the truth. Jessica was sobbing, clinging to Tom's arm. Meanwhile, the man Amy had pointed out was trying to sneak out of the venue. Sarah took a deep breath and began to speak. It's true that I was treated as a poor person by the woman who was to become my brother's wife. But that's a big misunderstanding. She slowly took out a business card from her bag. I'm a freelance graphic designer. And my husband, Mike, is currently stationed in Europe as the head of the overseas division of a major IT company. A murmur arose from the venue. Tom wore an expression of surprise. Sarah, why didn't you tell me this before? I didn't think it was necessary, Sarah smiled gently. Because we're family, I thought money and status didn't matter. Many guests could be seen nodding at these words. However, Jessica's expression was filled with fear. It's a lie. Absolutely a lie. At that moment, the man Amy had pointed out was stopped by security as he tried to rush towards the exit. Tom approached the man. Who are you? How do you know Jessica? The man turned pale and stammered, I'm Jessica's. He's my lover. Jessica suddenly cried out. He's my lover. The venue became chaotic again. Tom stood there, dumbfounded. Jessica continued, crying, I was in financial trouble. My parents' company was about to go bankrupt, but I thought I could manage with the help of Tom's family. Sarah looked at Jessica sadly. You were going to marry just for money. Tom's expression hardened. He slowly picked up the microphone and said in a trembling voice, "Dear guests, I deeply apologize, but today's wedding is cancelled." Voices of surprise rose from the venue, but many people nodded in understanding. Jessica collapsed to the floor, sobbing. "Tom, I'm sorry. Tom said without even looking at her, "That's enough, Jessica. Please leave." Sarah put her hand on her brother's shoulder. "Tom, are you okay?" Tom smiled tiredly. "I'm okay. Sarah, I'm really glad you and Amy were here." Amy ran to her uncle and hugged him. "Uncle, don't be sad." Seeing this scene, tears welled up in Sarah's eyes. She felt anew the strength of family bonds. The guests in the venue gradually began to leave. Sarah sighed deeply, contemplating the future of her family. As the venue gradually quieted down, Sarah took a deep breath and looked around. The faces of the invited guests showed a mix of surprise, confusion, and sympathy. "Everyone," Sarah began in a calm voice, "we sincerely apologize for the cancellation of the ceremony in this manner." Tom also stood beside her and bowed his head. "To all of you who have gathered here, I offer my deepest apologies. I never imagined it would end like this." Sarah placed her hand on her brother's shoulder and gently continued, "Please take care on your way home. And if you could, we would be grateful if you could consider today's events as a family matter." Surprisingly, many guests nodded in understanding. Some even offered words of encouragement to Tom. "It's all right, Tom," an elderly gentleman said. "Life is full of unexpected events. This will be a good experience for you." Sarah felt a warmth in her chest at the kind responses from the guests. Meanwhile, Jessica's parents rushed over. Their faces showed confusion and embarrassment. "Tom, Sarah," Jessica's father said in a trembling voice, "we're truly sorry. Our daughter's actions, Sarah gently extended her hand. "I understand how you feel. But this isn't anyone's fault. The truth has simply come to light." Tom looked at Jessica's parents and said quietly, "You two are not to blame. However, my relationship with Jessica ends here." The adults from both families moved to a separate room to discuss how to handle the situation going forward. Amy was left in the care of Sarah's parents. During the discussion, Sarah was overwhelmed by complex emotions. She had wished for her brother's happiness, but it had ended like this. At the same time, she felt relief that the truth had come out. "Sarah," Tom called out quietly, "I'm really glad you and Amy were here. If you two hadn't been here, I would have made a big mistake." Sarah gently hugged her brother. "We're family, Tom. We'll always be on your side." After the discussion ended, Sarah left the room with a tired expression. There, Amy was waiting with a worried look on her face. "Mom, are you okay?" Amy asked in a small voice. Sarah pulled her daughter close and stroked her hair as she answered, "Yes, I'm all right. Amy, you really are a special child. Amy tilted her head, looking a bit troubled. Did I do something bad? No, Sarah shook her head firmly. You did the right thing. Sometimes, revealing the truth is the most important thing. Something was changing in Sarah's heart. The bond of family, the importance of truth, and her daughter's special power. All of these were beginning to take on new meaning. She looked up at the sky and took a deep breath. A new determination for the future life was sprouting within her. Several weeks had passed since the wedding incident, and Sarah's family life was gradually returning to normal. Tom was immersing himself in work, trying to heal his wounded heart. Sarah and Amy were growing even closer. On a sunny Sunday morning, Sarah and Amy were enjoying a picnic in the park. "Mom," Amy suddenly said, "I can't see people's hearts anymore." Sarah looked at her daughter in surprise. "Really? How do you feel about that?" Amy thought for a moment before answering, relieved. "But maybe a little lonely too." Sarah hugged her daughter gently. "Your power was special. But even without it, you're still a wonderful child." At that moment, Sarah's phone rang. The screen displayed her husband Mike's name. "Hello, Mike." Sarah answered, and Mike's excited voice came through. "Sarah, listen. My overseas assignment is over. I can come home next month." Sarah's eyes welled up with tears of joy. "Really? Mike, that's wonderful." Amy jumped up and down with excitement. "Is Dad coming home?" "Yay!" That evening, Sarah invited Tom over for dinner. As they sat around the table, Tom began to speak, looking a bit embarrassed. "Actually, I have some news too," Tom said. "I've started dating a colleague from work. She's really a wonderful person." Sarah smiled genuinely. "That's great, Tom. I'm really happy for you." Amy also shouted happily, "Congratulations, Uncle." After dinner, Sarah went out to the garden and looked up at the starry sky. Past events, present happiness, and hope for the future. Everything seemed to be playing a beautiful harmony. Just then, she noticed a letter in the mailbox. Sarah was surprised to see the sender's name. It was from Jessica. The letter contained words of heartfelt apology and a determination to rebuild her life. Jessica wrote that she had been inspired by the strength of Sarah's family and had decided to live her life honestly. Sarah hugged the letter to her chest and smiled quietly. People can change. And family bonds are stronger than anything else. The next day, Sarah started a new graphic design job. It was an illustration for a picture book themed around family bonds. She decided to incorporate what she had learned through her experiences into this work. Epilogue. A year later, Sarah's family gathered again. This time, it was a party to celebrate Mike's return and Tom's engagement to his new partner. Amy, looking more confident than before, was happily playing with her new friends. Sarah looked around at her happy family and whispered to herself, "We've overcome difficulties and become stronger. And we found true happiness." In her eyes shone a determination for a future full of hope.